want to be very clear about what I am saying here and what I'm not saying here. I'm not going to tell you that he is innocent or that the accuser isn't to be believed. What I am saying is that the timing of this allegation and then following what happened immediately after raises some serious questions. And those questions definitely matter. For anyone that doesn't know, Graham Platner was a Democrat running for Senate in Maine. He was very vocally anti-Israel, very vocally anti-establishment. He was vocally critical of the Democratic Party's donor class. He was the type of candidate that party leadership definitely did not want near the Senate. But against the odds, he won. The voters of Maine, they went out and they voted. They voiced their opinion, and he became the nominee. And then at the precise moment when he was most entrenched in the race, an allegation came out. Okay, so I want to talk about that timing, because the standard thing that you hear is, well, don't ask why it took a woman so long to come out. That's being an apologist for that sort of crime. And in the broad sense, of course, there are many reasons why someone wouldn't come out immediately. That argument is being applied here in a way that is genuinely dishonest, because this isn't a situation where someone just waits a few months to a few years. She waited until this man had already won his primary. The voters of Maine already had their Democratic nominee, and to remove him suddenly makes their votes null and void. Essentially, they never got to vote. She waited until the moment where her coming out would give the Democratic Party absolute political cover to do exactly what it wanted to do anyways. I'm not dismissing her. I'm just noticing the extremely bizarre timing of her coming out with this allegation. And I think that we should be allowed to notice that. I shouldn't be, seeing people argue about this. Again, not defending him. It's not about him. This whole video. And as I've stewed with my thoughts and really sat with it and formed an opinion on this, the more it's evolved each day since this came out. So, here is what happened immediately after the Maine Democratic State Committee called for an emergency meeting, and they voted overwhelmingly to hold a nominating convention. So in this scenario, the people have no opinion, no voice for who they want to represent them. A convention of approximately 600 Democratic insiders would handpick their new candidate. The voters of Maine, who had already gone out and voted overwhelmingly in favor of Graham Platner, suddenly that just didn't matter. They get no say even in who replaces him. So honestly, ask yourself the question, do you really think they're going to replace Graham Platner with an anti-establishment, anti-Israeli candidate? No, they're not going to do that. There's also the chance that you get someone who says one thing and then they do another. They could elect someone, throw someone in there, and then when they get elected, they just do the complete opposite. And again, this is somebody that they didn't vote for. They don't have a choice. And then when you talk about the media, Joe Biden was accused of rape by a woman named Tara Reid. And she also had accounts of telling people about it after it happened. So it's the same level of evidence that Rassicot is providing. And so what did the corporate media do with Biden's accusation? Well, they buried it. And on the rare occasion that it got covered, there was always a level of skepticism behind it. It was always framed as unreliable or treated as a distraction. But the Platner allegations had immediate wall-to-wall coverage, and everyone was just screeching, drop out, drop out, drop out. Everyone was saying it. No one had any nuanced opinion about it that I could find, not immediately at first. But I thought it was really weird how nobody was seriously questioning the timing. So to make that crystal clear, it's the same level of evidence, the same level of corroboration, but a completely different treatment. And I don't think I'm out of line in thinking that they probably don't want you to notice this. Of course, typically, I believe women. I believe that sexual assault is rampant, underreported, and it just doesn't get taken as seriously as it should. And I also believe that the believe all women cannot be a dogma that just shuts down any critical thinking. Because the moment you establish that allegation, regardless of the timing, regardless of context, regardless of who it benefits, must be accepted without question. That is when you create the perfect political weapon. You then create a system where anyone can be removed from any race at any time by anyone with access to an accuser and the media apparatus to amplify its message. Let's be clear, that is not protecting women. That is using a tool. And people with power use tools to suppress those that threaten that power. So here's what I think this is actually about. The Democratic Party has spent years making it very clear that they do not want candidates to step out of line of the mainline establishment. You know, they have these very set up, acceptable parameters, which creates this weak, this fake, this inauthentic, it's not even really a party. It's just a piece of an establishment. That's why people like Donald Trump get elected in the first place, is because people don't have any hope for the Democrats. That's where you see these DSA sweeps taking place. You know, Mamdani and all of his endorsed candidates won. There's a lot of socialism. You know, Democrats don't like that because it threatens the establishment. Go figure. Just like Bernie Sanders. Twice. Aggressive challengers in primary after primary. Anyone who gets a little too loud about corporate power and war and class, they always get neutralized. Sometimes through the primary process or media coverage or other means entirely. Platner came out as an anti-Israel candidate at a time where support for Israel is at a record low, especially among Democratic voters. Are you seeing a pattern here? You noticing the correlation? He was talking about the class war at a moment where people were abandoning the party entirely over the class war. He was the kind of candidate that could have actually won by expanding the party's base, but he was removed by the party using a mechanism that bypassed voters entirely. Whether or not these allegations are true, this end result we have, it's perfect for the Democratic establishment. I am not asking anyone to decide whether or not Graham Platner is definitively innocent or guilty. I'm certainly not asking you to dismiss what his accuser said. I just want people to look at the full picture here, the timing of it. I believe that mistakes, of course, they're made, but they're not in vain if we learn from them. And if people can wake up and start looking at the bigger picture here, you have to look at the mechanism that was used to remove him. The media coverage when compared to other cases, the people who benefited, and the candidate that will replace him. Hold two things in your head at the same time: that sexual assault allegations deserve to be taken seriously, and that political institutions with a vested interest in a very specific outcome are not above using those allegations when it suits them. Both of those things can be true. Nuance is not being a rape apologist. Skepticism is not misogyny. Asking who benefits from this isn't dismissing the accuser. I'm just thinking. And right now, more than ever, that is exactly what they do not want you doing.